have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or human being during the next 30 days, except for you, your majesty, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Now, your majesty, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. So, King Darius said, why not? And he put the decree in writing. Now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room, where the windows opened towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, just as he had done before. Then these men went as a group and found Daniel praying and asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Did you not publish a decree that during the next 30 days, anyone who prays to any god or human being, except to you, your majesty, would be thrown into the lion's den? The king answered, yeah, the decree stands, in accordance with the law of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who was one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. The stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his knuckles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you continually serve, been able to rescue you from the lions? And notice, through all of this, Daniel has said nothing until now. Daniel answered, may the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the nations and peoples of every language in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and revere the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders. in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus, the Persian. So what is this story all about? When we were younger, we were probably told it's something about, well, whenever you get into hard times, maybe a time of danger, or you're scared, that God's going to make everything all right. Maybe something like that. Or, follow God, and no matter what happens, God will save you. It's going to be okay. But how many of us have lived enough life to know that sometimes bad things happen? And do we wonder, well, maybe the story isn't true? Maybe God doesn't like me like he liked Daniel? Are these questions that we ask? I want you to know that the Bible, the Word of God, is faithful. It's something that we can trust. And it's meant to give us hope. But when we give this story just that simple platitude as its meaning, we miss what's going on. Did you see the true plot of this story? Is the plot really necessarily that Daniel is just being persecuted for his faith? That's actually not what's going on here. Daniel is a man of God, and he's a leader, right? He's a ruler. I'd say he's a politician, but he was probably never really voted for, so I won't give him that title. But he's in charge, right? And what do we learn about him? He has no corruption in the way that he leads. In everything he does, he's not negligent. There aren't things that he just says, I don't really care what happens. So people might suffer, but I don't have time for that. No, he's not negligent. He's trustworthy. He's not corrupt. And so the other rulers see that this man is about to be over the whole kingdom. Not just one of the top supervisors. He's about to be in charge of everything. Why? Not because he looks good, not because he sounds pretty, but because he has integrity. And these men say, we can't have him in power. And some people think it's just a jealousy thing, right? Like, well, I want that, and I want him to have it, so he should suffer. And that could be it. Maybe it's a jealousy thing. But think about these people. What do we learn about them? They are completely and totally corrupt. Do you think they want a man like Daniel over them? What do you think happens if a man like Daniel, a leader with no corruption or negligence in the way that he leads, has men like this working for him? You think they'll have a job much longer? Do you think they'll be exposed? Yeah, probably. So what do? These people realize this man can't be allowed to be in charge. And they realize he has a weakness. Because they want to expose him, right? And say, look, he can't be in charge because he's done this or he's done that. But there's no dirt to dig up. And so it's not necessarily that they dislike him because he's a man of God, but they realize that because he is so committed to being faithful to his God, just as he's faithful to serving Darius with integrity, that is his weakness. Following God puts a target on his back, not because they necessarily don't like God, but because they know that's how they can trap him. And so what do first? We learn that these characters go to the king. They go to Darius, and they puff him up. Wouldn't it be cool if just for like a month, we made it so that people could only worship you? Yeah. Well, let's make that a law. Okay. And what does Daniel do when this becomes a law? He does what he had always done. He prays all day to Yahweh. Notice, we'll come back to this, he doesn't say, you know what, they just made a new law. I should start praying now. I'm not allowed to pray to Yahweh, but that's so important to me. So now I'm going to start doing it, now that it's against the rules. No, he does what he's always done. He continues to live with integrity, not just as a servant of his new king, but as a servant of his God. And now that the laws have been changed, hey, king, didn't you say we could only pray to you for a month? Yeah, I made it a law. Well, guess what? Daniel's now breaking one of those laws. And notice, too, how Darius responds. If you've been here, we've seen two kings now. We've seen Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, right? I ask you, do you think Nebuchadnezzar would have put up with something like this? Do you think Nebuchadnezzar would have cared about the rules and how the laws go? How does Nebuchadnezzar talk to his satraps and administrators? Hey, come here, I have a question for you. And if you don't answer it, I'm going to kill you and everyone you know. Do you think Nebuchadnezzar would have put up with this? But what do we learn about Darius? This new king that God's put in charge also cares about integrity. And we might say, well, that law wasn't very good. I'm not saying the law is good, but Darius realizes there's a way that his country functions, and he's not going to not be a man of integrity. Instead, he's also going to trust in this God that he doesn't even know. He only knows this God because of Daniel. And Daniel, he trusts so much that he's willing to give all power to him. And if Daniel is willing to trust this God, Darius is saying, perhaps I'll trust him too. Has this happened to any of us? Have we ever been threatened to be put into a lion's den? Maybe not. So this is Psalm 57. I am surrounded, the author writes, by lions. I lie down among devouring lions, people whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. Have we ever faced lions? We need to go deeper. We need to read between the lines. The real enemy is not lions. It is men who are willing to do anything they can to avoid being exposed, to avoid losing their power, even if it means killing an innocent man and manipulating their king. Notice, these people paint Daniel as a rebel, right? The men who just lied and manipulated their king. Listen to how they talk to him. King, we should make it so that people only worship you. Is this because they care about the state? Is this because they care about King Darius? No, they've realized Daniel's one weakness. And they know Darius' weakness, so they're exploiting him. And then when Darius figures out the trap that they've laid, what do? They don't say, oh, King, you're right. Maybe we should change that. Maybe we should just bend the rules. They say, no, King, you messed up. You got to kill the guy that you trust because you made law. Remember? This is manipulation. They're exploiting him. They paint Daniel as the rebel. But who's the real lion in this story? It's not the lions. It's the people, right? How often have we encountered people who have no good intentions? And maybe not with the state, Maybe not, we're not spending a whole lot of time in the White House or the governor's mansion dealing with crooked politicians and lobbyists. But how often do we go to work? Do we deal with family members that are crafty and manipulative? And we have to make a choice. We can either live with integrity and do things the right way, or we can play that game too. You see what I'm saying? That is the real choice that Daniel has to make. This isn't just about, well, Daniel's so righteous. He prays even when he's not allowed. The bigger thing in here is that Daniel has to make a choice. He can continue to live as the man that's given him his reputation, as a man without corruption, as a man who's trustworthy and not negligent, who doesn't live for himself, but lives with integrity. And he can either continue to live that way, or he can live like the lions. And he can be devoured by the lions, by becoming one. Isn't the Bible so smart? Do you see the rich irony that's here? But notice, Daniel never speaks. I think that's so important. How often do we shout and we yell about things going on in our world? I should be allowed to pray in public. I should be able to read my Bible in public and talk about God at work and do all these things. But what do we do when we go home? Daniel is known as a man of God, not because of what he's always saying, but because when you go to his home, when you go and find him, when he's alone, what is he doing? And why? Do you remember? For help. Daniel, who's supposed to be the guy in charge soon, recognizes God is in control. God is where my help comes from. My real king is not Darius, and it's not these lions. It's Yahweh. And what has Yahweh been doing for his whole life now? Saving him over and over and over. And so he doesn't need to defend God with his mouth. He doesn't need to be righteous with his mouth. He realizes, I just need to follow God with my life, and everything will be okay. And it comes. It's time to put him in the lion's den. And now we're talking real lions. His life is at stake. And he's saying, King, it's me, Daniel. Is he throwing around his weight, going to the soldiers and the executioners, saying, hey, do you know who I am? No, he's quiet and he's trustworthy. And he's faithful to his new king Darius without compromising his faithfulness to God. And he knows wherever that takes him, it'll be okay. Him and Darius could have worked together to change laws, to break their own system. That's what we call corruption. When powerful people say the rules can be broken for us. Right? You say, but Daniel shouldn't die anyway. What powerful person about to get in trouble doesn't say, yeah, but I'm actually okay. So the rules should be different for me. How often do we do this in our own lives? Yeah, Mom, I know it's the rule, but I had a good reason. Right? That's political corruption. To say I get to avoid consequences of breaking laws because I'm, one of the top people. I'm one of those important people. So he remains silent, and he looks Darius in the face, and he goes into the lion's den. And Darius, this man who doesn't know God, because he trusts Daniel so much, looks at him and says, I know you serve your God continually. May he save you. And what happens? Remember last week when we saw Belteshazzar? Or Belshazzar? There's no T. Daniel has the T, right? Gotta keep them straight. What was this story all about? It was about judgment, right? Do you remember this? Is Belshazzar thought that he was God, which means that he can live by any rules that he wants. And Yahweh had special rules for how the temple and the objects of the temples were supposed to be used, and Belshazzar defied them. right? And essentially, if you remember, looked God in the face and spat at him and said, I get to make the rules because I'm king. And this is the only time we see Daniel actually treat someone with disdain. And we find out it's because God looked at this powerful man and God made a judgment. He looked at him and said, you are guilty, and so you will die. And he does. By the end of the night, he's dead. Daniel, notice, he's put up for execution, right? That's how we say it. Do you ever think it's odd? The king comes, oh, you're still alive. Sweet, come out. Like, he won't break the rules beforehand, but opens the next day and come out. Do you see why this might be a little weird? I found this weird when I first read it. Like, really, if they were trying to kill him, don't leave him in there, right? So what scholars think about this passage is that it's not a traditional execution, right? It's not like what we see with like medieval times where they go and get the axe and just chop. This is not that kind of execution. This is kind of like a trial by combat, right? So-and-so says, you've defied my honor. No, I didn't. Well, how are we going to prove who's right? Well, we'll fight. And God will make sure the winner wins, right? This is a trial by combat. And he's not supposed to win. That's exactly what this is. This is the Persians saying, Daniel, you are guilty of treason by worshiping another god. And so we're going to have the gods prove that you deserve to die. So they put him in a situation that's impossible. And what happens? He wakes up the next morning and he's alive. With Belshazzar, he believes he is God. He is a man of great power. Why should he ever be afraid of anything? It would seem impossible that he should die. And he's dead that very night. Daniel also has a judgment. He's submissive. He's not using his power to get what he wants. He just trusts that God will help him. Afterwards, he prays 3 times a day that God will help him. And it seems impossible. But he lives. This is the story of Daniel that we're supposed to learn. We live in a world of lions. And it's not necessarily because we follow Yahweh, but it's because of how we live when we follow God. When we live as people of integrity, when we live avoiding corruption, and we don't just live for ourselves, we're not like the rest of the world. We don't play by their rules anymore. And it gets us into trouble. And what God is warning us is that when we live this way, we're going to get a target on our back. But he's saying, do it anyway. You're going to get in trouble at work. I remember, and I want to say it didn't really bother me, but it's been like 10 years now, and I still think of this from time to time. It was like I was 21 or 22 or something, and I worked at the Saturday shift, and no one likes the Saturday shift. No one else is there, and we're in a warehouse, so it's big, it's open, we're on the dock, so everything you says echoes, especially when there's only 3 people there, right? And it's loud. And the boss, only one boss would work on a Saturday, and they don't want to be there. They'd all trade or whatever, and so the boss working this weekend was like up at this cubicle above the dock we were on, just being quiet to themselves. And me and 2 other guys are just working, doing our thing. And there was one guy that kept shouting, Alex, get back to work. Alex, you're not supposed to do it that way. Alex, listen, Alex. I never stopped working. I was doing I'm the guy who trained him. I knew what I was doing. But I knew that he knew that our boss could hear him. But she couldn't see us. All she had to go off of is what this other guy kept shouting at Alex. Thinking, well, someday we're going to be up for promotions. And I'm going to make sure these bosses know that Alex isn't quite as good as I am. Right? This is the game that we play. These are the lions. And it may sound petty, but the truth is, I don't follow God as a leader of the Persian Empire. I was following God in a warehouse, and I had a decision. to be devoured by the lions and become one, to where I start playing that same game with him. Where when he's not around and my bosses can't see him, then I start whispering in their ear and telling them what I think of his work ethic. Or I can roll my eyes and just get back to work and do my job with integrity. See what I'm saying? This is what God is calling us to. That's what he wants us to understand from Daniel. And we might say, but Alex, you don't understand. I really need to get this job. I really need this promotion. Alex, you don't understand. I'm not going to be invited to family events anymore if they don't get to hear my side of the story and what I think of them. There are lions in our lives every single day. And we are going to be devoured by them if we become them. And Daniel is saying, fight these lions, not with your mouth, but with the way you live your life. Prove to everyone that you're a Christian, not by how you use your mouth, but by what you do. And hear me, when we're proving to the rest of the world we're Christians and we're different, it doesn't mean we put our necklaces with crosses and we have bumper stickers on our car. No, there's nothing wrong with that. I like to have Bible verses around me. Those are good things. But when we're alone and no one's watching, are we praying? Or is it just when we want to be loud? Is it just when we notice other people are not following God, so let me go tell them how we follow God? Or is it something that we've just been doing all along? Because our focus is not making sure everyone knows what we think they should know, or is our focus serving God? So before we end, I want to read out of Mark. This is something that Jesus said to his followers. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples, and this is Jesus speaking, and he said, whoever wants to be my disciple, who here wants to be a disciple of Jesus? Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. You think it's an accident that he uses the word cross here? For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. How many parallels do we see between Daniel and Jesus? Do we ever see Jesus advocating for Caesar to start following God? No. Jesus went around to the people and said, you need help. Do you know who can help you? God. He went to the people who were sick, to the people who were smelly, to the people who weren't allowed in society because something was wrong with them, to the people who were poor, to the people who didn't have much power, to the people who truly understood what it's like for there to be lions in control, and who are told their whole lives, you sit down, you shut up, and you obey, or else we'll make things worse for you. And Jesus went to these people, and he showed them that he could heal them. And that the true king of the world isn't like the lions. He doesn't come around to destroy the weak so that they can stay in power. This God goes to the weak and lifts them up because he is already powerful. This man did not advocate that Israel rise up in rebellion and destroy Rome. He advocated that they love one another even if it gets them killed. And when he walked into Jerusalem, he was treated like a king. And what happened right afterwards? He was murdered. Was it because he said, yeah, and I'm going to destroy Rome? That's why I'm coming. Or was it because he was walking into Jerusalem saying, I'm going to destroy the temple and all of its systems? No. It's because he said, I'm going to follow God the right way. The people in power, even the ones that claim to be people of God, they live with corruption. And they ultimately use the laws to lift themselves up and push down the weak. And Jesus said, that's not how we do it. We love everyone. And we say, but what if I don't get that promotion? Or what if they fire me? Or what if I lose friends? Or what if I'm not allowed at family functions anymore? What if they try to kill me? Jesus says that's how Christians fight. The rest of the world fights with guns and swords and evil words. Christians fight by not playing those games. We fight by dying. Jesus rebelled with the way in which he lived, and it killed him. It is no accident that he walked out of his grave to remind his followers the greatest power they have is they can take your life. But as Christians, the greatest power we have is we can give life. And so this really is, in many ways, the climax. Alex, what do we do when we're trying to follow God in a world full of people who don't even just not want to follow God, but are actually against us? We get our answer. We have a choice. We can be devoured by the lions by becoming one. Or we live like Daniel. We live like Jesus. And we have a routine of following God, asking him for help, and living with integrity. I don't know. Maybe you wanted something bigger, something flashier. But that's what we're called to. And it's not going to be flashy. But Jesus changed the world. 2,000 years later, we are here because a man came focused on lifting up the weak rather than keeping the powerful in power at the expense of other people. And 2,000 years later, we know that this man is God. We have to be different. We have to live with integrity. We don't need to be worried about other people's integrity. Focus on ourselves. Focus on love. And maybe people like Darius eventually come to have their eyes opened when they see this person is different and they just keep surviving. Sound good?
Amen.
Amen. All right. Let's pray together. Because this is hard work. It really is. Dear God, we thank you so much that you are a God who saves. And it might not be flashy. It might not come as quickly as we would hope. And it might cause us to have to live in ways that are awkward and uncomfortable. But we know at the end of the day that your kingdom is coming. That your kingdom is growing. And that your kingdom is a kingdom that cannot be toppled. Your kingdom is a kingdom that cannot be stopped, that will not fall, and it is a kingdom of peace, and it is a kingdom of justice, and it is a kingdom of goodness, and it is a kingdom of righteousness, God, and it's a kingdom of hope. Your kingdom, God, is unlike every other kingdom, and we want it so badly. And we ask that you will be with us every single day as we have to make choices: to live as the people of God or to live as lions. And we trust you that as tempting as it is every day to follow the lions, that you will give us the courage and the strength and the wisdom that we need to be like you. So that when people look at us, they won't see someone with fangs. They won't see someone who is dangerous, but they will find someone of integrity and love. And they may come to see that you are beautiful, that you are the Lord of the world, and you are our one true hope. May every tongue praise your name, and every knee bow before you. Amen.